Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am.
Nino Brown Boxing, and I'm back in the building. Shout out to the LDBC. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Man, it's getting closer to fight week. Well, not really. We over a month away. I'm talking about the Jarrett Hurd, Julian J-Rock Williams fight. And I'm making this video because I'm just thinking about boxing in general. And I gotta say, man, my man Jarrett Hurd is one of the hardest working guys in boxing today. A lot of people don't like to give him credit. Honestly, I'm really trying to figure out the reason why. You know, all of my hardcore boxing fans, like, I understand we all have our biases. We all have the guys that we prefer for whatever reason. If it's a hometown guy, if it's stylistically, if it's due to just the personality, the excitement, some even the promoters of the networks, whatever the case may be. But I gotta say, man, like, when it comes to in-ring activity, when it comes to level of competition, Jarrett Hurd is the hardest working guy in boxing when it comes to 154 pounds, when it comes to the welterweight division. I can honestly say when it comes to middleweight. And what I mean by that is, like, I understand you got guys like Errol Spence, and he's been dubbed. I understand all of that. You know, certain things, it's out of people's control. So I don't want people to think that I'm not taking those factors into consideration. But all of that stuff aside, you know, a guy like Errol Spence can't control what another guy's doing. But some guys just get the opportunities that other guys don't. And right at this point in time, Jarrett Hurd is taking the more difficult fights back to back. You know, he's had injuries, he had unifications, and he's taking a lot of tough fights. Now, the whole conversation about Jarrett Hurd being top 5 pound for pound, I truly believe that he's that. I mean, Jarrett Hurd, when it comes to men's boxing, Jarrett Hurd is the only he's the only American male unified champion in boxing. He's the only, outside of Anthony Joshua, he's the only black unified champion in boxing. And to me, I mean, that says a lot. Like, I understand Terrence Crawford was undisputed. That's why Terrence Crawford is number 1 pound for pound in my book. Jarrett Hurd can't take that spot at this point in time in his career. I just don't see it. But he's definitely up there. I have to put him top 5 pound for pound. Jarrett Hurd has had a tough road, man. He's had a very tough road. He had tough fight after tough fight. He's been doubted. He's overcame it. And one thing that a lot of people, well, it's 2 major factors that I believe that people are not giving Jarrett Hurd his credit. 1, his style. 2, Jermell Charlo. Now, I want to speak on the style first. We all know Jarrett Hurd, he's the type of guy, he'll take a punch to give a punch. But I've seen Jarrett Hurd fights early in his career. I mean, if you haven't heard Jarrett Hurd's story, you know, it's a few stories out there. He gives like a brief background, and he started boxing not necessarily extremely late, but based off the short documentary that he had, he wasn't serious about boxing like his whole life, like a guy like a Floyd Mayweather type or Andre Ward. You know, he had points earlier in his life when he dabbled in it. He left, he came back, and he started taking it serious when he was a little older. But Jarrett Hurd can box. Like, I've seen Jarrett Hurd. He's a better boxer than a lot of people give him credit for. Defensive wise, I mean, he's doing what works for him. Obviously, he's spoken on it himself. He needs to work on his head movement. He understands that, and those type of things is not going to change in one fight. But at the same time, Jarrett Hurd is fighting a lot of guys that are stylistically difficult for him, and it's a lot of tough fights. Obviously, his last fight he had coming off the injury wasn't the toughest fight, but hey, the man was coming off an injury. He had shoulder surgery, and he wanted to test himself out. But that's a lot more to say compared to a lot of other guys. I mean, Jarrett Hurd's fighting Julian J-Rock Williams. May 11th. The fight is approaching fast. It's happening at Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia. It's right outside of D.C., right outside of Maryland. People not familiar with the DMV area, Eagle Bank Arena is where, to my understanding, it was like where George Mason basketball team plays, their college basketball team. They're not. I DM'd Jarrett Hurd on Instagram, and he told me they're not having it at. He said they're not having it at the MGM National Harbor, basically because it's too small. I know he said the harbor holds about 3,000 people, and Eagle Bank can hold up to 10,000. Obviously, it's no Dallas Cowboys Stadium. It's not on Earl Spence level. But, you know, the DMV, we slowly getting there. Yeah, I mean, this fight with J-Rock, I know it's going to be a tough fight. J-Rock is a very respectable opponent. I feel like Jarrett Hurd taking this fight, it's a damn cop behind me. I feel like Jarrett Hurd taking this fight is definitely a good look for him. A lot of people will feel like, I don't know, man. I really don't understand the reasoning behind like people not giving Hurd his props. I've heard different people say things like Hurd should fight. Like, let's say that the hypothetical situation, if Tony Harrison Charlo fight doesn't happen, Hurd should still fight Charlo. And I'm like, to me that makes absolutely no. To me that like Jarrett Hurd fighting Tony Harrison, it makes absolutely no sense. Jarrett Hurd not fighting Tony Harrison if it's not an immediate rematch makes no sense. Him fighting Jermell Charlo, to me, at this point in time, it's to satisfy some people, but I thought the goal was unification. I thought that was the most important thing in the division. Jarrett Hurd has made it clear on what his mission is in boxing. It's to unify. Now, at this point in time, Tony Harrison and Charlo, they're in negotiations for sometime late June for their rematch. Jaime Munguia, you know how that whole situation is. The likelihood of that fight happening is slim. But, so he's fighting J-Rock. J-Rock is definitely a tough competition for the guy. But yeah, I was saying before my phone fell, it makes no sense for Jarrett Hurd to fight Charlo if that fight doesn't go through with Charlo and Tony Harrison. My whole thing with that is Charlo lost. It doesn't matter if people think it's controversial. It doesn't matter if, you know, whatever the outcome of people's beliefs are, Charlo has an L on his record. He has a blemish. Nothing career ending. Charlo's still a good fighter. He's still a championship caliber fighter. It doesn't change any of that. But Charlo has to bounce back. Erickson Lubin had to bounce back off of losses. Laura had to bounce back off of losses. Tony Harrison, before he got this opportunity to fight Charlo, he had to bounce back. Charlo he's no different. He doesn't get any passes. And if that was Jarrett Hurd that lost that fight, man, if Jarrett Hurd and Tony Harrison would have fought, and Jarrett Hurd would have lost, and Jarrett Hurd would have been saying, oh, come on, Charlo, let me get a shot at your WBC belt, even though I lost my titles to Harrison, Charlo would be all over facing Harrison. He would be like, man, you lost, and all of that talk would shift, and his focus would be on Harrison at that point. Some people would say, no, that's not the case, but I mean, me personally, man, I don't believe it at all. I like Charlo. And Hurd's my guy. He's my hometown guy. But Hurd is the hardest working guy at the 154-pound division. Another thing that I like to talk about that seems like a lot of people ignore in this whole 154-pound discussion is Jermell Charlo had the opportunity to be in Jarrett Hurd's shoes. He didn't take advantage of it. Now, prior to him losing, you know, he wants to be more aggressive about it. My thing is, Jermell Charlo, he got a title at 154 9 months before Jarrett Hurd beat Tony Harrison for the IBF belt. Jermell could have unified with Laura. He didn't. He had 9 months to unify with Laura. I understand the whole Erickson Lubin fight, but we hear it all the time, over and over again. Unification trumps mandatory. People want to talk about friends and all of this and all of that. I'm not trying to hear it. You're in the same division. You know, you talking about how good you are. You want to be the best. Well, Jamel, you should have fought. You should have fought Laura. You didn't. Hurd jumped on it. He got the victory, and you fought Harrison, and you took the L. That's the difference. I feel like at this point, Jermell Charlo's toughest fight, even like before it was a loss on his record, Jermell Charlo's most difficult fight, the best name he has on his resume, it is Tony Harrison. Like, Tony Harrison is a good fighter. A lot of people seem to remember Tony Harrison for simply being stopped by Jarrett Hurd and stopped by Willie Nelson. Tony Harrison was the second coming. He was basically Tony Harrison, even though it wasn't a first round knockout, he suffered the same type of loss that Erickson Lubin did. He was in there against an experienced fighter, and he got stopped. He had to bounce back. He worked his way back up. But Tony Harrison was definitely a young, up-and-coming contender, very promising, very talented guy. Even though it took him an amount of years, he got set back, and now he's a WBC champion for 154. It's just, all I wanted to say about that is, Charlo, he's a good fighter. We know he's skilled. You know, we know he has a lot of abilities. But in his biggest step-up fight of his career, he took an L. He wasn't aggressive enough. You know, he was. I mean, he didn't break Harrison down systematically like Willie Nelson did, and how Jarrett Hurd did. He was going in there for a one-punch knockout. He was trying to take the man's head off. And if you don't know by now, Tony Harrison, he's a great boxer. You know, he has great lateral movement, and the guy has some crack. He got enough power to keep a guy off of him, and he has enough power to stop a guy. Now, I believe Jermell Charlo realized that in the fight, that Tony Harrison definitely has the ability to stop someone. So he wasn't as aggressive. He wasn't as active. Yes, when he got he felt that he had his opportunity. You know, he threw some home run shots, and he missed a lot of punches. And Tony Harrison, he kept his jab out there. You know, kept popping Charlo's head back, and it is what it is. I feel like before anyone starts this whole Charlo Hurd talks up again, Charlo needs to get his belt back. And if the fight doesn't happen next for Charlo, he needs to have a bounce back fight. I mean, we have two guys in the division that aren't unified. You got one guy in the division that is unified, being Jarrett Hurd. My whole thing is, you coming off of a loss, you lose your belt. You shouldn't be able to jump the line in front of people like J-Rock when you're coming off of a loss. J-Rock, he worked his way back up. You can't jump the line from a guy like J-Rock. You can't jump the line. Shit, I mean, if that's the case, Laura should get a rematch. Laura didn't get his rematch. Why should Jermell Charlo have an opportunity to jump the line and get a shot at her? I mean, put it like this. If Jermell Charlo, if they can't make that fight with Tony Harrison official, Jermell needs to fight Laura. If Jermell beats Laura, he definitely deserves a shot at Jarrett Hurd, without a shadow of a doubt. And even if he doesn't have that WBC belt from Tony Harrison, Jermell Charlo defeats Laura, he gets that shot. And me being a huge Jarrett Hurd fan, I would be very consistent. I'll yell it as loud as I can. That's a fight that Jarrett Hurd needs to take immediately if Jermell Charlo can beat Laura. And this is a Laura coming off of a draw. Now the guy Brian Castano that Laura just got a draw with, shit, Jermell Charlo can go after him as well. I don't think that would be as prestigious of a win as a Laura fight, just simply due to the fact that the history Laura has made and his success over a long period of time in the sport. But hey, man, I feel like it's a start. And with Hurd being a WBA super champ, if he beat Brian Castano and become a regular champ, hey, man, consolidation is definitely needed. But we'll see what happened. May 11th, Jarrett Hurd versus J-Rock in the DMV area. Shout out to my DMV family. This is Nino Brown Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC, and I'm out.